Through. This is the first in a series of small short videos that I'm going to do to follow up on the print production checklist that I've put together. That exists in a PDF form. We will also print it so you can have it for reference. But some of the things that I mentioned in the checklist would be served better by a little bit of instruction here and there. So just to make it crystal clear and to explain, I will do a few of these videos following up on some of those points, and then those printed checklist points will serve as a reminder of what you're seeing here, and it'll be even clearer and probably easier to recall. So I'm going to start with the overprint part of the print production checklist. Overprinting is just the simple state of turning on an overprint fill or overprint stroke setting in the attributes panel. What that's going to do is just make sure that the ink doesn't knock out the ink that it's sitting behind. So this black wouldn't leave a white hole in the yellow ink and then print on top of that. Normally what would happen is you'd have, when you printed this, it would be printing in two separate passes, and the ink would go down, the yellow ink would go down like this and leave out a gap or a hole for the black type to come next in another pass, and the black ink pass would come and then print over top the black here. And what you end up having sometimes is just like it shows here, you see a little bit of a gap. Their registration is a little bit closer than what I'm doing by hand, most likely, but some presses, especially newsprint, can be this obvious. And that's not as desirable, and it's easily fixed with small black type by simply making that black type to overprint. So that when you go to separate, that yellow will just lay down a solid flood, it's called. A flood of yellow means there's no knockouts. And then the black will overprint and come next. And because black isn't going to be affected that much by laying on top of a lighter color, it's going to still read as black regardless. And so it's usually desired for black type to overprint. Now if you have huge white big fat type at like 40 point size, and that's printing over top of an image or something and you're overprinting, you will probably see some image detail inside that, because you do still pick up ink density changes over top of 100% black. 100% black is not as dark as you might think. And this is a perfect example down here. If I turn on Overprint Preview, which is under View, Overprint Preview, that actually shows you which things will knock out or overprint in a preview form. And it's also going to simulate the way black looks. So this black on the left here is 100% black only. You'll see in the color channels here that there's no other ink. A rich black, which is usually what you want if you have a large area of coverage and you want it to be nice and solid black, you're going to want to go for something closer to, I've always used 30% of each ink and then 100% black. Some printers will vary a little bit on their preferred ink mix. But generally a good rule of thumb would be to make it between 30 to 40 of each channel. 30 I think is enough for most cases, and then 100% black. And you'll notice here that's about the amount of difference you're going to see between just a 100% black and a rich black. So this down here is an example of what you would do to trap white type, small white type or headline type like this, in a rich background. There's no need for trapping if it's knocking out of just 100% black, because there's no other inks to register with. But if we are placing that type over top of a rich background like this, now we have 30% of each of these inks that all have to line up. Each pass of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black have to line up with each other to give us these gaps or these knocked out white type areas. And for small type especially, that is going to be a problem, and you're going to have some fringing of cyan, magenta. Those will be the most noticeable around the edge. So some of the presses that we would send stuff to are smart enough to catch these kinds of things in the pre-production workflows that they have. They have some of them, some of the higher end printers will have sophisticated trapping software, and they don't rely on the designer for these things, and they will auto trap all of this. And we may at times just ask them for trapping services on these things, but some of these little things we can do in-house just to make sure that this doesn't slide through or slip through and pose a problem. And it's really good for you all to understand how the inks go down and how this all goes together in your own mind, so that you can make these preventative steps, as well as just have a bit of a deeper understanding of the printing process. So what I do for the small type is I would give it a stroke of black. So we're going to go to the outline, give it a black stroke of 100%, but now you're seeing that's going to cut inside the type. Well, we don't want that, so I would put it behind the type. Unfortunately, even though the stroke panel allows us the ability to align the stroke inside and outside, that only works on, let's do it here, that only works on shapes, not type, which is unfortunate. So if I made this really thick, you'd see that it's centered on the line, and if I go here, it's on the inside of the line, and if we go here, it's to the outside of the line. That's exactly what we want on this type. We want the stroke to be 100% black and go to the outside of our stroke. But we don't necessarily want to convert these type to outlines, which would also do the same thing. It would give you that control. So what we do instead is we go into here and we turn these all off in the character level. We want to remove the stroke, and we might as well remove the fill here too. And let's move up to this level, and we will add a stroke and add a fill. Now those are mounting on top of the character level. They're now on the object level, and it will respect our stacking order on the object level. So here we'll make the type white. We'll give the stroke a black outline, and that should be, yeah, it's 100% black. And now we're seeing that it looks exactly the same, except that I can now take that stroke and move it behind. So what you'll see is it's basically cutting that stroke appearance in half, because it's behind the white fill. Half of it's just disappearing behind the white, and half of it's poking out outside. So really a 1 point stroke only gives us a half point of trapping. And that's something, depending on the tolerances of the press, that sometimes needs to be clarified. Usually a half point trap is sufficient for any decent press work. It may not be enough for newsprint. Good presses can do with half point or less. We will leave it on a half point, and you might even be more generous in a case like this where it doesn't need to be trapped that tightly, and it's not going to change the appearance if we add more here. So I would do the same thing to here. We give it a stroke of black, put it behind the fill, give it a fill of white. Oh, I've got it the other way around. It's easy to get confused when you're recording and demonstrating and talking at the same time. So that is going to help us an awful lot, and it's going to be really clear when I go into my separations panel and give you a preview of this. You'll see that if I turn off my black plate for a minute here, everything looks fatter because the black plate is what's giving us the actual shape and form of our type. Everything else is being choked back, where the ink is moving back from the edge, which is called choking those plates. So yellow's being choked, cyan and magenta are all choking back. Only black goes all the way up to it. So the rest of those three inks will go as far as a half point up to the edge of the type, and then it'll stop, and then that black ink will go all the rest of the way, giving us the form we want. And there will be, just because it's black, because it's so thin of that 100% black without those other inks, the fact that it's not a rich black is not discernible to the eye. It's not visible. But the crisp type is a big difference and makes a big difference to the eye, what we see. And if we had all those inks misaligning just a little bit, that would be much more of a problem than any perceptual difference in black densities there. That's a long-winded way of giving you a little bit of an understanding of overprints here. Remember that Overprint Preview helps you see what the inks will be doing. The other thing to remember that is a gotcha, I think I mentioned in the checklist, is if we had this as black type over yellow and we'd set it to overprint like I said before, and it's set to overprint there, and then I just decided I'm going to change this color, and I'm making a design decision later on, and I want this to be, a darker color. Now all of a sudden I just say I want this to be white, because at this level it's not reading very well, and I change it to white. Well, I have Overprint Preview set on, so it's actually simulating the overprints, and it disappears. If I don't have Overprint Preview on, which most of you are not used to working with, everything looks fine, and it'll look great up until the point that I go and print to PDF. And let's say if I go and make a PDF out of this, Acrobat Viewer, Acrobat Pro, I go to Output Preview. I have the button up in my toolbar on top because I use it so much. I would recommend putting it up there. If you don't know how to customize this, then one of us who do can just help you grab that and put a few of these commonly used icons at the top. And this is really quite a powerful tool. Before Acrobat implemented this or put this in, it was a lot more difficult to guess how your separations were going to work. But you see right now, simulate overprinting is turned on. If I turn that off, then your type would look white there and you'd see it fine. But simulating overprint is on by default, and I recommend having it because it helps you catch these things. And you'll see that the white type has disappeared, and you're wondering, oh my goodness, what happened? I had type here on this page. If you don't have Output Preview on, it's going to look fine. So that's why going to that extra step just helps you make sure that everything is looking correct. And you'll see your trapping, your type here, trapping. If you turn off the black plate, turning off just the black plate helps you understand a lot of things. It tells you if your black is overprinting, if this type up here, if this white type was black and it had been set to overprint, then all the color would stay there when I turn the black plate off. It wouldn't knock out and leave a white type underneath. And right now on the bottom here, it's helping us understand that when I turn the black off, that all the other plates are choked back, the cyan, magenta, and yellow. Choking back means that the ink has been held back from the edge of the object that you're printing, in this case the type. The cyan will only go so far and then it'll stop, and it'll allow the black plate to go farther, right up to the edge of the white type. But it won't have to register all these three inks right up to the edge of the white type. It'll hold them back or choke them back that half point distance. And then the black will take it the rest of the distance right up to the edge of the type. And it's a much bigger problem for the eye recognizing misaligned color inks behind the black and peeking into this white type area. That is a very discernible or visible to the eye, whereas the difference in black densities between the rich black and where it comes up to the black, 100% black around the type, there's a little bit of a, it's basically dropping off from rich black to only a solid 100% black. But because it's such a small distance around the type, your eye doesn't really see it that much. It's barely discernible. And that's a bigger, that's more forgiving. It's a better, um, it's a it's a better, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a better shortcoming or limitation than the other way around. Okay, I think I have one more little thing here to point out. That is that I found out because I went through this once and it wasn't working the way I expected. It was taking the white type when I had an overprint on it and stripping out the overprint effect, and then I was going into Acrobat to show you the effect of it overprinting and disappearing, and lo and behold, the white type was not disappearing. It was knocking out the background. And I researched and found that in recent versions of Illustrator, under Document Setup, there's this little setting here to tell Illustrator to discard white overprint in output. So when it comes to output time, it was stripping out this white overprint. It was discarding it. It was saying, it's basically like saying, a lot of people aren't going to catch this thing, so I'm going to take this and strip it out whenever I run into white overprinting, because that's most likely a mistake. And I can't imagine a context where it isn't a mistake, actually. So that's quite bright, and it actually saves us a lot of headaches if that is indeed turned on. So we just want to have that in mind, know about that, make sure that's kind of in your memory bank in case you have to go and check that and see that it's turned on sometime. Other than that, it is nice to have that for a safeguard. I will sign off here and we'll see you in the next little tip. Thank you.